Hello and welcome to today's Hellraiser blog. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed today's blog, please hit the subscribe button. We love growing the Hellraiser YouTube family. We'd love to have you on board with us, so give us a subscribe and you can see future blogs. Been a very good week this week for Hellraiser boxing, not least because Philip Bowes won a major title in winning the Commonwealth at my show at York Hall last week with a second round knockout. To clinch the title. He's been mandatory for quite a while, Philip Bowes, and got his chance and seized it with both hands. And Philip Bowes will go and defend the title on the 30th of March on Eddie Hearn's show in Liverpool, which will be broadcast on Sky Sports. So well done, Philip, you've done us all proud. And like I say, it was a work over a long period of time, and we all dug deep and did what we had to do, not least Philip, who went and claimed the title last weekend. And I'm really glad for Philip to have achieved that, because whatever happens now in his career, he will always have been a Commonwealth champion. So well done, Philip. Okay, so the fight I'm going to cover today, James Degale versus Chris Eubank Jr. The press conference for this fight was held at the Cafe Royal, where I ran the boxing for 6 years. It was like the first big break that I got in boxing promoting. And it drew up a lot of happy memories that I'd had from working at the Cafe Royal. The hall that I actually boxed in the hall years ago, 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago. The hall that used to be the boxing hall at Cafe Royal is now bedrooms, hotel bedrooms. So no more boxing at Cafe Royal, unfortunately. But okay, so the fight I'm going to cover is James Degale against Chris Eubank Jr. James Degale has called this fight the retirement fight. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think if Chris Eubank Jr. Was pipped in this fight, in a close contest, he can come back from it. If James Degale gets beat by Chris Eubank Jr. After Eubank Jr. has been beaten by Billy Joe Saunders and beaten by George Groves so convincingly, I think that James Degale can call it a day. But if Eubank loses, I think he can come back from this. James Degale has looked to be in decline. I've got to say, against Caleb Truax, for me, Caleb Truax has got a very good style to counteract what James Degale... James Degale is all about movement. Now, we've heard about James Degale had Achilles tendon problems, which firstly would hamper his movement. We're told that those are now in the past and that his Achilles is okay again. Will he be the same? We'll soon find out. But Caleb Truax has got that sort of pressure fighting, cutting off the ring, moving his head consistently, coming in close, and there's every chance that Caleb Truax would have made Degale look worse than what he normally would. You've got to say also, though, Eubank's strength is also walking fighters down, cutting the ring off, getting inside of their jab. That said, the two fighters that really beat, or certainly outboxed Eubanks convincingly in Billy Joe Saunders and George Groves, were both guys with very good jabs. Well, James Degale's got a very good jab. If his Achilles tendon is not a problem, then you'd think the movement that James will have probably give him a lot of advantages here. In terms of height and reach, there's almost nothing between them. There's like an inch, so you can't really say it's going to dictate the tactics on height and reach. But I still think that if James Degale has got his movement, then I think that will dictate the tactics, and James will use that to open angles and to confuse Eubank and keep Eubank stagnant. We saw with a recent fight with George Groves, where George used his strength to force the tempo and force the actual positioning of the boxers in the ring throughout the bout. Does Degale... He certainly, for me, doesn't punch as hard as George Groves, and never has done. Well, not since they've been professionals. But he does punch maybe hard enough and accurately enough to take the wind out of Eubank's sails and stop Eubank from... Because Eubank here, for me, he has to walk. He's only got one chance of winning. He has to walk Degale to the ropes and be able to keep him there. And Degale's very light on his feet, very quick movement and unpredictable how he can switch and he can change his angles of attack and defence, meaning that it's going to be hard to see how Eubank can corner him, because James, if he doesn't have any Achilles problems, I think would be able to move his way around Eubank. And he's maybe not known as a concussive puncher, James Degale, but he does punch hard enough to stop a fighter in his tracks, like James Degale has done with various opponents in his career. And I mean, James Degale's first defeat came against George Groves in a fight where James tried to sort of purely, to me, outfence Groves, and Groves pipped him. It was a debatable decision. It was very close. But here you've got a fight where James actually, he can sit down at a fraction of a second longer to get a little bit more leverage and lower his centre of gravity and get a little bit more power into his shots and still have the movement if his Achilles holds up, which I believe what they're saying when they say his Achilles is okay now. Caleb Truax, who made James really struggle in both fights and not shine and look his best, and people I think are reading into that, oh, Degale must be past. He is past his best. And Caleb Truax, you've got to understand, has got almost like a perfect antidote to all of James's strengths. He walks forward, he moves his head, he cuts the ring off. I would say Caleb Truax cuts the ring off better than Chris Eubank Jr. A lot of people critical of Eubank's going to Mayweather's gym. But most of the fighters in Mayweather's gym are not counter-punchers. They're not movers like Floyd. They're actually pressure fighters. The ring mat in Floyd's gym is like a sponge, it's like a mattress, and the fight, it's like Las Vegas conditions, you know, thick ring mat, and most of them are into walking their opponents down. And for that reason, I think it's not a bad choice. And I go to Mayweather's every year, and actually I go there at the same time of year when Chris Eubank Jr. is out there, sometimes Chris Senior as well. So I've got to know him over the years in Mayweather's. And the first thing that I would say is, you know, Chris has a reputation, Junior, of being like someone that's disliked or who's arrogant like that. I know the guy. I've met him. I can tell you, he's a very nice person. He's a good person. He's not a bad guy. He's certainly not arrogant. Never been like that with me. He's always been very down to earth and quite real. You know, which I don't think his reputation is for being someone that's down to earth. That, you know, is genuine in that way. But this isn't about being a nice guy. It's about winning a boxing match. And for me, Eubank, I mean, look, he struggled with the movement of Billy Joe Saunders. He struggled with the movement and the stiff punching of George Groves. And my feeling is here, he might struggle with James Degale, because James Degale, although not known to be a concussive hitter, like a one-punch knockout merchant in the way that George Groves is, he punches plenty hard enough. I was a trainer at Dale Youth earlier in my life, and James, actually, his first fight was against a boxer that I trained in the amateurs called Ben Callum. Ben Callum wasn't bad himself, and I realised straight away, right, James Degale, good fighter, going to do something. I didn't know he'd be an Olympic gold medalist, but I knew he'd be pretty good. He's a stiff puncher himself, James, when he wants to be, and I think he'll have that little bit too much power to unsettle. I think every time that Eubank Jr. is going to set his feet and wind up those. So I mean, it looks very impressive. I mean, Chris Eubank Jr.'s best performances so far have been on Instagram. He looks very impressive on Instagram, but never in front of him on Instagram do you see someone that's got the movement of James Degale. It's always like on a wall bag or a punch bag or on the mitts. With James Degale, I think as soon as Eubank sets himself and starts wailing those combinations, James will be off. He's not going to stand there. He'll be off with straight punches, and James is adept at countering with straight punches while on the move. Or move, stop, punch, move again. And that's what he's going to employ here. I think that's what James has to do. And if James does that, then I think he gets the win here. He wins it on points. I'm really looking forward to it. And I think it's a really good fight for ITV. You know, it's really going to put ITV boxing back on the map, where they should be, where we need them in Britain. Also, I mean, I've got question marks about Chris Eubank Jr. Is he big enough at super middleweight? He's certainly strong, but he's always struck me as like a middleweight that boxed at super middle, because that's where the big money was, and that's where he's followed it to. James Degale is a huge super middle, so he gets in there. By fight night, when he gets in, I'm expecting James to be significantly more imposing and bigger. So I'm going for Degale on points. Please, guys, if you enjoyed the blog, please hit the subscribe button. And I'll see you again soon on another Hellraiser blog. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.